When I found out I was pregnant, I had this naive hope that my mother, Diane, would finally change. That maybe, just maybe, becoming a grandmother would soften her, make her less overbearing, less critical. But I should have known better. Michael and I had been trying for a baby for 2 years, and when it finally happened, we were overjoyed. We spent months preparing, choosing names, decorating the nursery, reading all the books. But I wasn't prepared for the storm my mother would bring into our lives. Diane had always been controlling. Growing up, I was never allowed to make decisions without her input. What I wore, what I ate, who I befriended, she always had the final say. When I married Michael, she took it as a personal betrayal, as if I was choosing him over her. Our relationship had always been strained, but I had learned to keep my distance. Until the pregnancy. The moment she found out, it was as if she saw it as her second chance at motherhood. She started calling me every day, sometimes multiple times, asking invasive questions about my body, my symptoms, my doctor's appointments. If I didn't pick up, she would leave long, guilt-tripping voicemails. Then she started showing up unannounced. I'd come home from work and find her in my kitchen, rearranging my pantry. One time, she brought a giant bag of baby clothes, half of them yellowed and frayed from when I was a baby. She acted offended when I gently told her that I had already bought new ones. "This baby is just as much mine as it is yours," she snapped. "No, Mom, it's really not," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Michael tried to keep the peace, but even he was getting frustrated. "She's acting like she's the one having the baby," he muttered one night after Diane had left, slamming the door behind her. I thought it couldn't get worse. But then labor came. We had planned everything carefully. I wanted a quiet, intimate birth. Just Michael and me in the delivery room, no one else. We informed the hospital staff, wrote it in my birth plan, and told Diane firmly that she could wait in the waiting room. She did not take it well. The moment I went into labor, she started calling nonstop. Michael had to turn off his phone. When we arrived at the hospital, the contractions were already unbearable, and all I wanted was to focus on getting through them. But just as I was being wheeled into the room, I heard a commotion outside. Diane. She was arguing with the nurses, demanding to be let in. I'm her mother. She needs me in there. I clenched my teeth through the pain. "Michael, do something," I whispered. Michael stepped out, trying to reason with her. I could hear her voice rising, shrill with desperation. I was there when she took her first breath, and I'll be there when she gives birth. The nurses finally had to call security. Even through the agony of contractions, I felt humiliated. Why couldn't she just respect my boundaries? Why did everything always have to be about her? Hours later, after what felt like an eternity, our daughter Lily was born. The moment I held her, I felt an overwhelming wave of love and exhaustion. I thought, for a fleeting second, that maybe Diane would understand now. That maybe seeing me as a mother, she would finally step back. I was wrong. The very next morning, before visiting hours even started, Diane showed up at the hospital, somehow convincing a nurse to let her in. I had barely slept. Lily was in my arms, and Michael was dozing off in the chair beside me. Then the door swung open. I just couldn't wait. Diane beamed, stepping inside like she owned the place. Michael jerked awake, blinking in confusion. I just stared at her. "Mom, how did you get in here?" "Oh, I have my ways." She waved a hand dismissively, already reaching for Lily. "Now, let me hold my granddaughter." I gripped Lily tighter. "She's sleeping." Diane ignored me and tried to take her anyway. I recoiled, feeling a surge of protectiveness I'd never felt before. "Mom, stop." She froze, her face twisting. "Lauren, don't be ridiculous." I was too exhausted to argue. "Mom, I need you to leave." Her face darkened. "You're being ungrateful." I didn't care. I didn't have the energy to care. Michael called a nurse. Diane stormed out before we had to. But that was just the beginning. The next few weeks were hell. She showed up at our house daily unannounced, with bags of baby supplies we didn't ask for. She'd let herself in with the spare key she somehow still had and rearranged the nursery while I was asleep. If Lily cried, she'd rush to pick her up before I could. "This is what happens when you don't listen to my advice," she'd say smugly when I struggled to soothe Lily. She criticized everything I did, how I held Lily, how I fed her, how I dressed her. One time, I caught her trying to give Lily a sip of water, even though I had told her a dozen times that newborns only need breast milk or formula. I snapped. "Mom, stop. You're not her mother, I am." Her expression turned ice cold. "You don't know what you're doing." That was the moment I knew something had to change. Michael and I sat down that night, exhausted and drained. "We need boundaries," he said. "Real ones." I agreed. But enforcing them? That was going to be a battle. The first few weeks after bringing Lily home were supposed to be a time of bonding, healing, and adjusting to life as new parents. Instead, they became a battle for control. I had made my boundaries crystal clear to my mother. No unannounced visits. No interfering with our parenting decisions. No undermining me as Lily's mother. But Diane ignored every single one. The first time she barged in uninvited, it was just a few days after we got home from the hospital. I was sitting on the couch in my robe, exhausted, trying to breastfeed Lily, while Michael was in the kitchen making coffee. We hadn't even heard the door open. "Oh, my poor baby," Diane's voice rang out, but she wasn't talking about Lily. She was talking about me. "You look awful." I jumped, trying to adjust my robe, feeling completely exposed. Mom, what are you doing here? I brought food, she said as if that explained her breaking into our house. She walked in like she owned the place, carrying a large bag of groceries. And diapers. And baby wipes. I know you young mothers never buy the right kind. Michael stepped into the room, his face darkening. Diane, you can't just walk in. How did you even get in here? She scoffed. Lauren gave me a key, remember? I had given her a spare key years ago in case of emergencies, but this was not an emergency. I glared at her. Mom, you need to call before coming over. And knock. She waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I'm just trying to help. Then, without asking, she reached out and tried to take Lily from my arms. I instinctively tightened my grip. Mom, she's eating. Diane sighed, exasperated. You're doing it wrong. No wonder she looks so fussy. That was the first time I felt pure rage toward my mother. Not annoyance, not frustration rage. But I was too drained to argue. Michael, however, had had enough. Diane, we need space, he said firmly, stepping between us. If you want to visit, you need to ask first. Diane's face hardened. I just wanted to see my granddaughter. Why are you both being so cruel? That was how it started. She began showing up constantly, letting herself in despite us asking her not to. We changed the locks, and she lost her mind over it. I'm being treated like a stranger, she cried over the phone. I thought I was family. She criticized everything I did. If Lily cried, it was because I wasn't feeding her right. If she was gassy, it was because I wasn't burping her properly. If she didn't sleep through the night, it was because I wasn't strict enough. One day, I caught her in Lily's nursery, rearranging everything. I had placed Lily's clothes in the dresser by size. Newborn on top, larger sizes below. Diane had moved everything around. Mom, I snapped. What are you doing? This makes more sense, she said. You'll thank me later. I don't need you to reorganize my house. She just smirked. You'll understand when you have more experience. I wanted to scream. I was Lily's mother, but Diane acted like I was some clueless babysitter who needed supervision. Then she started pushing the idea of becoming Lily's nanny. I'll watch her when you go back to work, she announced one day as if it were already decided. I blinked at her. Mom, I never asked you to do that. She smiled tightly. Of course not. You don't have to ask. It's what grandmothers do. I knew exactly what she was doing. If I let her be Lily's primary caregiver, she would take over completely. She would make the rules, feed her what she wanted, raise her how she wanted. Mom, we already found a daycare, I said carefully. The smile dropped from her face. You're putting my granddaughter with strangers? Professionals, I corrected. Michael and I already made this decision. She shook her head, looking disgusted. You don't trust your own mother, but you trust some strangers? You're making a huge mistake. I thought she would let it go. She didn't. Instead, she started calling my relatives, telling them I was trying to keep her from her grandchild. It started with my aunt, her sister. You know your mother is heartbroken, right? Aunt Susan said over the phone one afternoon. She just wants to help. I pinched the bridge of my nose. She's not helping Susan. She's ignoring my boundaries. She's your mother, Susan said. She just wants to be part of Lily's life. She is part of Lily's life, I said. But I'm her mother, not Diane. Then my cousin Rachel called. Hey, your mom is telling people you're shutting her out, she said hesitantly. She's making it sound like you don't let her see Lily at all. She sees her constantly, I snapped. She's overstepping. Rachel hesitated. Yeah, well, she's making it seem like you're being cruel. That's when I realized what my mother was doing. She was turning the family against me. A week later, I got a call from my uncle. I heard you're treating your mother like a stranger, he said coldly. She's treating me like an incompetent child, I shot back. I think you should be more grateful, he said. She raised you, didn't she? I was shaking when I hung up. Diane had successfully painted me as the villain. The ungrateful daughter. The cruel, selfish woman keeping a loving grandmother away from her grandchild. Michael saw how much it was weighing on me. We need to go no contact, he said one night as I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, dreading another call from a relative. I swallowed hard. I don't know if I can. She's making your life miserable, Lauren. I knew he was right. But cutting off my mother? That felt impossible. Then she did something unforgivable. One afternoon, I went to the store for 20 minutes. When I came back, Diane was in my house, holding Lily. Michael had been in the shower, and Diane had let herself in with a spare key I hadn't even known she had. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding. Mom, I said slowly. How did you get in? She looked up at me, completely unfazed. Oh, I just wanted to spend time with my granddaughter. I walked straight to her and took Lily from her arms. My hands were shaking. Give me your key. Now. Diane's eyes widened. Lauren, don't be ridiculous. Give me the key. My voice was dangerously low. She hesitated, then pulled the key from her pocket and slapped it into my palm. I can't believe you're treating me like this. I ignored her. I walked to the door, opened it, and looked at her. Leave. Her face twisted. You'll regret this. I shut the door in her face. Michael came out of the bathroom confused. What happened? I looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in my arms. Then I looked at the locked door. We're going no contact, I said. And I meant it. The day I found out my mother had been posting photos of Lily on social media without my permission, I saw red. Michael and I had been clear from the beginning. We didn't want our daughter's face plastered all over the internet. We had agreed on a few private pictures shared with close friends and family, but no public posts. It wasn't just about privacy. It was about control. We wanted to decide what information about our child was out there, not have someone else make that decision for us. But Diane didn't care. I found out through my cousin Rachel, who texted me a screenshot one morning. Is this okay? Thought you should know. I opened the image, and my stomach dropped. It was a Facebook post from my mother's account, public, of course. A close-up of Lily, fast asleep in her crib, her tiny face fully visible. The caption made my blood boil. My sweet Lily, my pride and joy. She looks just like me, doesn't she? #blessed grandmother. I felt sick. I immediately went to Diane's profile and saw more. Pictures of Lily at the hospital, pictures of her in the onesie I had picked out for her first day home, even a picture of Diane holding her that I didn't remember being taken. The worst part? The comments. People I didn't even know were commenting on my daughter. She's beautiful. You must be so involved in raising her. Grandmothers always know best. I bet she loves spending time with you. Oh, she's so lucky to have a grandma like you. Are you babysitting often? Diane had been replying. Yes, I see her all the time. We have such a special bond. I nearly threw my phone. I immediately called her. She didn't even sound surprised to hear from me. Oh, hi, sweetheart. Did you see the pictures? Isn't she just precious? Take them down. My voice was shaking. Now. There was a pause. Then an annoyed sigh. Lauren, don't be dramatic. I told you we didn't want her pictures online. Oh, please, she scoffed. Everyone posts their grandkids. It's not a big deal. It is to me. It is to Michael. Well, I'm her grandmother. And I'm her mother. I was practically yelling now. Take them down, or I'll report them. That got her attention. You wouldn't. Try me. There was a long silence. Then she huffed. Fine. If it makes you happy. She hung up. Michael walked into the room and saw my face. What happened? She posted Lily's pictures all over Facebook. He exhaled sharply. Did she take them down? She said she would. But I don't trust her. I was right not to. The next day I checked. The original posts were gone. But she had uploaded new ones, this time in a private album. She had simply changed the privacy settings so I couldn't see them. I lost it. I blocked her on everything. Facebook, Instagram, even her number. Then I posted a message on my own account. Just a reminder, please respect our wishes as parents. We do not want pictures of our daughters shared online. If we see it happen again, we will take action. I didn't name Diane, but she knew it was about her. The phone calls started almost immediately. From my aunt, from my uncle, even from my father, who barely spoke to me. She's devastated, my Aunt Susan whined. You blocked your own mother? She broke our boundaries. She just loves her granddaughter. No, she loves control. Then came the rumors. At first, it was just whispers. Diane complaining to family members about how I was shutting her out and turning Michael against her. But then it got worse. She says you won't even let her see Lily. My cousin Rachel told me over text. That's a lie. She's telling people you're keeping Lily from her out of spite. I was furious but not surprised. Diane had always played the victim when she didn't get her way. Then came the biggest bombshell. Rachel called me one night, her voice hesitant. I don't want to stress you out, but my mom overheard your mom talking about lawyers. I sat up straight. What? She was saying something about grandmother's rights and how she's looking into what she can do legally. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I had heard of cases like this before. Some states had laws that allowed grandparents to sue for visitation rights. It was rare, and usually only happened if a parent was unfit or if the grandparents had previously been primary caregivers. But I knew my mother. If there was even a tiny legal loophole, she would try to use it. I told Michael that night. We need a lawyer, he said immediately. So we got one. We found a family attorney, a woman named Lisa Caldwell, who had experience with cases like this. She listened patiently as I explained everything. Diane's constant boundary violations, her attempts to manipulate my family, her social media posts, and now the legal threats. Lisa sighed. Your mother sounds difficult. That's putting it lightly. She nodded. Here's what we're going to do. First, we document everything. Every unwanted visit, every manipulation attempt, every time she tries to interfere. If she so much as hints at legal action, we need a record proving that she's been disruptive. Michael and I spent the next week compiling everything. We printed out text messages, screenshots of her social media posts, and notes on every uninvited visit. Then, Lisa sent Diane a formal cease and desist letter. It was polite but firm. Stop interfering, stop spreading false information, and stop making legal threats, or we would pursue further action. The response was immediate. Diane called me, screaming. You got a lawyer against your own mother? I didn't engage. You were talking about suing us. I would never, she lied. I was just exploring my options. Well, now you know your options. And they don't include my child. She sobbed. She screamed. She called me ungrateful, cruel, heartless. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of my mother. And I wasn't going to let her win. The final breaking point came when my mother showed up at Michael's office completely unannounced, creating a scene that humiliated him in front of his colleagues and left both of us shaken. Up until that moment, we had managed to keep most of the conflict contained within our home and family, but when she crossed the line into Michael's professional life, it became clear that she had no limits. Michael was not the type to lose his temper easily, but when he called me that afternoon, I could hear the controlled fury in his voice as he told me what had happened. He explained that she had walked right past the receptionist, insisting she had urgent family business, and by the time security was called, she had already started crying in the lobby, claiming that we were tearing her away from her granddaughter. She had told him she couldn't sleep at night knowing that Lily was growing up without her, that she didn't want things to get ugly. But if we continued to push her out, she would have no choice but to explore her legal options. The humiliation and rage in Michael's voice made my blood boil, because I knew exactly what my mother was doing. She was trying to intimidate us, trying to make it seem as though she had some kind of power over us when in reality, she was grasping at straws. Michael had security escort her out, but we both knew that if we didn't take more serious action, she would keep escalating. We had no choice but to take legal steps to protect ourselves. Filing for a restraining order was not an easy decision, not because I felt guilty, but because deep down, I knew that once we did it, there would be no going back. My mother had always been manipulative, always found ways to make me feel like I was the problem, and I knew that this time would be no different. But Michael and I both agreed that if we didn't act now, she would keep pushing until she found a way to force herself back into our lives on her terms. Lisa, our lawyer, listened patiently as we explained what had happened, and though she had heard plenty of horror stories in her career, even she seemed slightly taken aback by how far my mother had gone. She told us that showing up at Michael's office was a major red flag, a sign of desperation, and that if we didn't set firm legal boundaries, she could escalate even further. She instructed us to document everything we had: text messages, emails, social media posts, and, most importantly, the security report from Michael's office. Once we compiled everything, she filed for a temporary restraining order, citing harassment, boundary violations, and emotional distress. When my mother was served with the legal papers, I knew immediately because my phone exploded with calls and messages from furious relatives who had clearly only heard her version of the story. My Aunt Susan was the first to call, her voice dripping with disappointment as she demanded to know how I could do something so cruel to my own mother. I was exhausted before the conversation even began because I knew exactly what she had been told, and I knew there was no point in trying to make her see reason. When I told her that we had filed the restraining order to protect ourselves, she scoffed and said that my mother was heartbroken, that she wasn't a danger to anyone, and that I was blowing things out of proportion. I could hear my uncle in the background muttering about how kids these days have no respect for their parents, and it took every ounce of patience I had not to hang up the phone. Over the next few days, I received call after call, message after message, all filled with the same accusations, that I was overreacting, that I was cruel, that I was letting Michael turn me against my own mother. My father, who had never been particularly involved in my life, even called to weigh in, his voice laced with disapproval as he asked me if I really thought taking legal action against my own mother was necessary. But then, to my surprise, he sighed and told me that when he and my mother had divorced, she had done the exact same thing, turning everyone against him until he was the villain and she was the victim. For the first time in years, I felt like he actually understood what I was going through, and while it didn't change the situation, it at least made me feel less alone. Since my mother could no longer contact me directly, she turned to social media, making vague but pointed posts that were clearly about me. She wrote things like a mother sacrifices everything for her child, and in the end, she is cast aside like she never mattered, and some people forget where they come from, but karma always catches up, and while she never mentioned me by name, it was obvious to everyone who she was talking about. Her friends flooded the comments with support, telling her that she was such a wonderful grandmother and that they couldn't believe her own daughter was treating her this way. Then she got more direct, posting things like grandmothers have rights too, and no one can keep a loving grandmother away from her grandchild forever, which made it clear that she was still considering legal action despite the restraining order. I refused to engage with her, but Michael and I continued to document everything, saving screenshots of every post, every text she sent to our relatives, and every passive-aggressive attempt she made to paint herself as the victim. Lisa assured us that she had no real case, that most states only granted grandparent visitation rights in extreme circumstances, usually when the grandparent had played a significant role in raising the child. My mother had not, and she knew it, but that didn't stop her from trying to scare us into believing otherwise. Then, out of nowhere, Lisa received a call from my mother's lawyer, saying that Diane wanted to pursue family mediation instead of continuing the conflict. I didn't trust it. Michael didn't trust it. We both knew that my mother didn't suddenly have a change of heart overnight, and that this was likely just another manipulation tactic. But Lisa encouraged us to at least consider it, explaining that if my mother was willing to meet under legal supervision, it would give us an opportunity to set even firmer boundaries, and if she refused to cooperate, it would only strengthen our case against her. So, reluctantly, we agreed to the mediation. The meeting was held in a neutral office downtown, and Michael and I arrived early, feeling tense and on edge. Lisa sat beside us, calm and professional as always, and when my mother finally walked in, I was surprised by how small she looked. For the first time in months, she didn't look like the overbearing, manipulative force I had been battling against. She just looked tired. She sat across from us, her lawyer at her side, and for several long, heavy moments, no one spoke. Then finally she sighed and said, "I never wanted it to get this far." Michael and I didn't say anything because we both knew that wasn't true. She had pushed and pushed, refusing to respect any boundaries until we had no choice but to take legal action. She looked at me, her voice shaking as she told me that she loved Lily, that she loved me, and that she didn't understand why we were shutting her out. I clenched my hands together, forcing myself to stay calm as I told her that we had never shut her out. She had refused to respect boundaries, and we had done what we had to do to protect our family. Her lawyer cleared his throat and carefully said that Diane understood she may have overstepped, which made me want to laugh because overstepping was an understatement for what she had done. But then, to my shock, my mother actually admitted, for the first time, that she shouldn't have gone to Michael's office. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it was the first time I had ever heard her take responsibility for anything. We laid out our terms. No more unannounced visits, no more social media posts about Lily, no more manipulation through relatives, and absolutely no more legal threats. My mother had tears in her eyes as she promised that she would try to do better, and for the first time, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she actually meant it. But deep down, I still wasn't sure if I could trust her, because Diane had never truly changed before, and I wasn't convinced that she ever would. After the mediation, my mother started following the rules, but the damage had already been done. For the first time in my life, Diane was respecting boundaries, at least on the surface. She stopped showing up unannounced, didn't try to push her way into our lives, and even started going to therapy, something I never thought she would do. She sent carefully worded texts asking if she could visit, rather than just showing up. When she did come over, she was polite, measured, almost like she was walking on eggshells. But despite all of this, I couldn't bring myself to trust her again. Michael and I agreed that any contact between her and Lily would be supervised. There was absolutely no chance that we were going to leave her alone with our daughter, not after everything she had done. Every visit was planned in advance, kept short, and took place either at our house or in a public setting. Diane tried to act like this was normal, like she wasn't bothered by the fact that she wasn't allowed to have unrestricted access to Lily, but I could see the frustration simmering just beneath the surface. One afternoon, she came over for a short visit, sitting stiffly on the couch while I held Lily in my arms. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I could hold her, you know," she said casually. I hesitated. I had let her hold Lily before, but only when I was sitting right next to her. "She's happy right now," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Diane exhaled, her fingers twitching slightly. "Lauren, I'm not going to run off with her," she said with a small, forced laugh. I didn't respond, and the silence stretched between us. I knew she wanted me to say something, to reassure her that things could go back to the way they were before. But that would never happen. Even though she was behaving now, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all just an act, that the moment we let our guard down, she would revert back to her old ways. Michael felt the same way. One evening, after Diane had left, we sat on the couch in silence, the weight of everything still pressing down on us. Michael finally sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "Do you think she's actually changed?" I shook my head. "No. I think she's just realized she has no other choice." Michael nodded. "Then we keep doing what we're doing. Supervised visits only. No overnights. No alone time." It hurt to say it out loud, but I knew it was the right decision. I had seen how easily my mother could manipulate people, twist reality to suit her narrative. I wasn't going to let that happen to Lily. Despite our careful approach, my mother still found ways to make herself the victim. One day, my cousin Rachel pulled me aside at a family gathering. "Look, I know you have your reasons, but do you really think she's still a threat?" I stiffened. "Why?" Rachel bit her lip. "She's been talking to some of the older relatives, making it seem like you're treating her like a criminal. She keeps saying she's doing everything right, and you still don't trust her." I clenched my jaw. Because trust isn't automatic. It has to be earned. Rachel sighed. "I get it. I do. But you know how she is. She makes herself sound so pitiful. And some people are starting to take her side." That didn't surprise me. I had already noticed the shift in how certain relatives treated me. Some of them were colder, more distant. Others made passive-aggressive comments about how family should come first, or how grandparents are so important in a child's life. My uncle had even tried to corner Michael at a different family gathering, asking him if he really thought it was fair to punish Diane forever. Michael had shut him down immediately. "She's lucky she still gets to see Lily at all," he had said flatly. "That's more than she deserves." The more I heard about my mother's behind-the-scenes manipulation, the more I realized that some people would never understand why I had to set these boundaries. To them, Diane was just a loving grandmother who had made a few mistakes, not someone who had trampled over my autonomy, disrespected my parenting, and tried to control my family. One evening, after yet another exhausting conversation with a relative who didn't understand, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, debating whether I should start cutting people off. Michael sat across from me, watching me carefully. "You don't have to keep explaining yourself to people who don't want to listen," he said quietly. I exhaled. "I know. It's just hard. It feels like the more I try to do what's best for us, the more people turn against me." Michael reached across the table, taking my hand. "Then let them." His words settled deep in my chest. He was right. I had spent so much of my life trying to manage my mother, trying to keep the peace, trying to make sure I wasn't seen as the bad daughter. But the truth was,